Hello and welcome to Ecoholics. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic, which is Dialectical Materialism by Karl Marx. Today we are going to be learning what exactly the dialectical materialism is and how it's important for so many competitive examinations. So let's begin. First, let's understand who exactly was Karl Marx. Now, Karl Marx, everyone knows, was a great philosopher. He was an economist and he was a sociologist, and he has given a variety of theories, a variety of concepts, ideas for the purpose of welfare, for the purpose of people, as an observation. He has written so many publications which have created history in this field of economics and philosophy and so many other fields. So which is why Karl Marx always has been a foundational personality while learning economics. Now, he had given his book publication Das Kapital. Now, in Das Kapital, he further then there was the Communist Manifesto as well. So in all of these books, majorly there was capitalism which was criticized, or not just criticized, but the merits and demerits especially were highlighted in these publications. But there was something else also which was very different and very unique, and that was dialectical materialism. Now, when we talk about dialectical materialism, if we break this terminology, so dialectics majorly talks about a system of operations, modus operandi, something that exists, a system which exists no matter what. Okay, now under this materialism, now what is materialism over here? When we say materialism, okay, now when we say materialism means materialistic concept. So Karl Marx stated that it's actually the economy does not change or does not get bothered just because of the non-material things, but it is actually about the material things, something that is there, something that you can touch and feel, something that is physically existing. On those grounds, the economies change. Now, this was an idea, okay, and this idea was presented in his publications. The terminology was not actually given by Karl Marx. Interestingly, the terminology was actually given by Friedrich Engels, who was one of the co-authors also of his publications and a very dear friend and also an economist. So he and many other economists further curated this terminology, dialectical materialism, for Karl Marx. Okay. Now, when we say history moves through conflict, the major idea behind dialectical materialism is that history moves through conflict. So he says that it's the power of negation. So what will happen that there will be a society, and there are going to be characteristics of that society, the features, prime features of that society will exist. It will be great, everything will be great, but then the negatives of that society are going to negate itself, and the negation itself is going to create room for a new pattern, a new society, new characteristics, new demand and supply conditions. In a way, this ideology itself is groundbreaking and it's actually factual. How he had mentioned it as being a factual thing will be told in the ways in which he has presented the dialectical materialism. So the interpretation of history has actually been divided into stages. So let's understand these stages. The very first stage is the stage of primitive communism. Primitive communism. Now here again there are two words, primitive and communism. Communism, you all know, is an ideology of community, okay, and primitive means a foundational, basic, simpler, backward kind of a society. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of the primitive communism? The first primary stage from where economies usually begin, according to Karl Marx. This is the earliest stage of the society, the primary stage of the society. And there is no concept of private property. Okay. There are no classes as well, okay, because we are talking about communism, so it's community based. Whatever is there, whatever resources are there, belong to everyone, right? So no private property, no classes, there's collective ownership of resources. Collectively, they are owning various resources, whether it's an agricultural economy where there is cattle and there are natural resources like ponds and rivers. Everything is collectively owned by the people, the community, and the production is for survival and it's not for profit, which means that right now the economy is no longer in a state where it could produce for trade, for trading, for business. Okay, so there's no concept of business, there's no concept of profit. The only thing is that so much should be produced that the people could survive, the community could survive, right? Now, what are the views around this by Karl Marx? Karl Marx says that this is an egalitarian society, but economically backward. Okay. Now, what do we mean by egalitarian? Egalitarian is an idea, a concept which suggests that everyone is equal. So, it's an egalitarian society where the basic rule is that everyone is equal. Everyone has equal right. Okay. But also it is economically backward. So, the production and the consumption and the distribution, everything, whatever is there is only for survival. It does not give any revenue generation methodology, right? Now, interestingly, if we go previously, okay, under this idea, Karl Marx actually mentioned that whatever we are studying under economic or economics, whether it's politics, whether it is law, whether it is culture, whether it is ideology, all of these are considered as softwares. Okay. Karl Marx says that, see, when we are learning about history, when we are learning about societies, we should understand that all of these are major softwares which run the society, which run an economy. But the hardware on which it is running is actually the economy. So the economic structure is the hardware, while all of these other things are just the software. Both are very important for the efficient running of the whole economic structure, right? So in that way, Marx says that this stage, the first stage, is majorly believing that everyone should be equal. So there's no exploitation, no kind of concept of surplus and then surplus value, and it usually ends when you will have surplus production, and which means that when there is surplus production, it will be possible for the community to do business, to do trade, because then that surplus could be sold. Okay, it could be called marketable surplus. So that is one of the prime characteristics of the primitive communism. Okay. Now, the next stage is slavery and feudalism. Now, as we stated that when there's establishment of one stage, how does it go to the next stage? When there are going to be some issues or some problems, or probably that stage now will change through some major landmark characteristics, new characteristics adopted. So which is why the stage will change. Now, the first thing that I mentioned was that this stage is going to end when there is going to be surplus production, when there will be possible that now the production can be sold. So the idea of business, when will enter into this community, the stage is going to change. Okay, now it will no longer be primitive communism. For example, what are the contradictions that were mentioned? That gradually there will be growth in the community. There will be tools which will be developed. Now these tools, whoever is developing these tools will obviously think that, okay, now I am preparing my own tools for maybe hunting, gathering. I should keep it as my own private property. If someone else has to utilize them, then of course they should pay me something. Of course, there is no concept of cash credit, so they will pay me in barter. So the concept of trade will basically come. Now here we need to understand that the change is coming due to business, the ideology of business, okay, and trade. So moving to the next stage, we have slavery and feudalism, okay. Now what does the slave society and feudalism say? Slave society means there are owners and there are slaves. People who are owning the resources, people who are enslaved by those owners, okay. And there is direct ownership of labor, okay. It started from in ancient Greek and Rome, and of course then later you would see that European region definitely had a major role into looking at this concept, this society. And then of course it's not just Europe or any other nation, but Karl Marx suggested that whenever you will see the development of a society, gradually it will have these changes any which ways, okay. Then feudalism. Now this concept is not unknown to you all, because even if we talk about India, the colonialism definitely had its prime role to play by playing through feudalism, okay. Now what does feudalism mean? Feudalism basically is a system of loyalty and of land ownership. So feudalism is going to be a part of the economic structure when there are kings, when there are rulers, okay. Now what will happen? These rulers own the land. They occupy, they capture, and they own the land. Now the rulers and the kings own the land, and they are going to, now they can't cultivate the land, they can't do anything about the land, they can't manage it alone. So what they're going to do? They're going to make pieces or areas, okay, of that land, and they're going to provide them, these areas, to the noblemen, kings, noblemen. Now the kings, noblemen are going to manage these huge areas. How they are going to manage? Because noblemen are managers. How they are going to cultivate the land, or they are going to perform the duties, operations? Through peasants and serfs. So the bottom line under the feudalism is peasants and serfs. Problem happens where the feudal lords start thinking that everything is under their control. So every piece of revenue, every piece of profit must be given to them, and so the bottom line always gets exploited. The peasants and the serfs always get exploited, right? That's the concept of feudalism, and which of course we see in the stage second, okay. Serfs are tied to land, they are not free. You must have heard about the concept of bonded labor. So a family, first the father goes to serve as a peasant, then maybe the father dies and the mother goes, and then the children also are there joining the sequence of bonded labor, where they are attached to that land because they have to become debt free, and this debt has arrived because of these rulers and kings and their noblemen, right? So that's the feudalism. Now what's Karl Marx's view? Here exploitation begins. So exploitation becomes institutionalized, formalized through a system, institutionalism. Exploitation is happening. Production also expands because there are so many workers, there are so many people who want to work, right? Population increases in an economic structure, so people want to work, people want to get employed, and because of employment, what they are actually being done are, they are going to get exploited. So the production definitely expands, cultivation happens, but freedom is pretty limited. And the class conflict also intensifies. The class conflict between the feudal lords and the peasants also arises, right? Now, what are the contradictions? How this particular stage is going to subside and how new stage is going to arrive? Let's see that. So, growth of trade and towns. Now, what will happen? Of course, growth is going to happen, and growth will not restrict itself to only some areas or some sectors. It is going to expand. The trade is going to expand, and there are going to be new things. New cities are going to also grow. New towns are also going to grow. And the merchants are going to increase now. Independent entrepreneurs and merchants who have some unique commodity to sell, all of this merchandise is going to begin. So now the era will be of merchants, and so the feudalism is going to subside, and it will lead to a new type of energy, a new type of climate, a new type of characteristic, further dividing and segregating the existing economic structure into bourgeoisie and proletariat. Okay, feudalism plants the seeds of its own destruction. Okay, now it's actually not the destruction of feudalism, but it's just the makeup has changed. Feudalism has gotten a makeover, and now because of growth, people have become educated, right? So in the economic structure now, even if there were peasants and there were feudal lords, the peasants also have grown. Some of the families have grown. They have gotten education. They have gotten awareness. Now there are more amount of people who are towards, who are thinking about business, because of course the people who have been exploited, they would think that if ever we could get an opportunity, we would also love to do business. We would also love to do trade. So they also simultaneously kind of join the connection that entrepreneurs would have, and it leads to the stage 3, which is capitalism. Okay, the growth of capitalism. Now in this growth of capitalism, what happens? There are two segments of economic structure majorly: the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Bourgeoisie, who are the owners of capital or the capitalists, and proletariat, who are the workers. Okay, now here we definitely would see that there is concept of private ownership, and this private ownership exists in the hands of bourgeoisie. Okay, the labor are provided wages, and the motive is profit. Now the motive is not just to satisfy your own needs, but it is profit. So now from stage 1 to stage 3, you would know how did capitalism start in any economy. How did capitalism happen? If you look at the history of any economy, any economic revolution, and then you start clicking on those things, you will identify that yes, Karl Marx was actually true by saying that there is a structure, a system of negation, where one society or one economic structure ends and another begins. Now, here Karl Marx suggests that there is the concept of surplus value, okay, where workers create more value than the wages paid. Obviously, it means that the wages are less paid to the workers. The workers are working more, either they are working more number of hours or they are doing more amount of labor. In whatever conditions, they are being underpaid, and because of that, the surplus value is created by the capitalists. This surplus value can be utilized for earning profit, for reinvestment, for many other purposes, for expansion of the capitalist business, basically. Okay. So this This basically is a very important groundbreaking ideology and concept and theory, which was also provided by Karl Marx. Karl Marx's whole publication is with regards to this stage, which does not just exploit people but also disorients the economic structure according to Marx. Okay. There is increasing inequalities because surplus value is created on one hand, but workers are not being provided any a good amount of wages. The wages are minimal. Subsistence level wages are provided. Their working conditions, of course, are poor. But now what happens? These conditions will prevail and profits will increase. But for how long? Karl Marx says that, see, the capitalism has its own seeds of destruction again. Why? Because if things do not improve for workers, these are the people who are well educated also. These are the people who are working for the businesses, for the entrepreneurs, for the capitalists, and they are not like peasants who do not have any power. The power of voice will be found, and this industrial reserve army, these workers are going to create a kind of revolution. So what happens now? At a lower wage, people start refraining from being employed. Because of that, gradually the capitalist profits start deteriorating. So there will be falling profits, and there will be periodic crisis and class polarization. Okay, so very famously, Karl Marx suggests that capitalism is dynamic but self-destructive. Okay, now after this, there are two ways in which we can go. One way is that the capitalism has destroyed completely, and the second one is we come to the present day where we still see that yes, capitalism exists. So why capitalism still exists when it already had its seeds of destruction clearly, which we will come to in the next two slides. So stay tuned with me for more. Okay. Now coming to the next stage. Once Karl Marx suggests that this great revolution has happened and capitalism has died, what comes next is social order and socialism. Capitalism was all about profit making and exploitation of people, and which is why the contrast, socialism, will be all about the welfare of people, okay, and no interference of private players. So the transition happens where there is dictatorship of proletariat, okay, where basically we are talking about the government which controls the means of production. There's no private player who's going to control the means of production, and the private property concept is completely abolished. Okay, the class struggle still exists because this could not end. Inequalities do not end suddenly. Okay, so it takes time. But what's the Marx view on this stage? Capitalism will collapse due to its contradictions. Proletarian revolution is inevitable. Why? Because now people start demanding for welfare, for opportunity, for equality. So because of that, the social order will come. The people are going to choose their representatives and a government will be formed. The government or the state is going to look after the people. Everything will be under the control of the government, and people are going to be equally treated. That's something that's usually considered as, you know, the socialism. Now, final stage after socialism, after this stage 4, we transit towards finally communism. Now, this is not primitive communism, this is the finale communism, okay, where Karl Marx suggests that after this, the next stage would just be that even the state control will be subsiding, and now everything will be classless and stateless and moneyless, and everyone is going to be equal. Okay, that's the finale, that's the final stage of this economic structure. Okay. Now, there's this thing that Marx never gave a detailed blueprint of how communism should look like, which is very interesting because there's so many people who think that Karl Marx provided something very strict and in a very systematic way in which communism should look like, but it was not like that. Okay, there are vague lines, and these can be these lines can be interpreted in any which manner we want. We will interpret only the economic interpretation of history. So the golden question that we had asked, why did capitalism not die? Now, this is a very, very important question that often appears in many exams as well, that when Karl Marx suggested, and he wrote so much about capitalism being, fueling the revolution, and how it was so much related to exploitation, why capitalism did not die as we can see it today? Because after the end of colonialism, historically, we can see that the capitalism transformed, because now, along with the government welfare schemes, policies, the private players were also regulated and supervised. The private players were involved in many things. The businesses were very important. The government definitely thought that the businesses are very, very important for generating revenue and profit, because each economy also is like a business. Each economy behaves like a holistic business, and trading with another economy as another business. So because of that, no economy would want that their profits could decline. Today, in the world of FDI, FPI, we just talk about money, and which is why capitalism could not die. Secondly, capitalism transformed according to the rebellion. So once the rebellion started between bourgeoisie and proletariat, the structure of capitalism also started to transform. We saw that there were such businesses and such ideologies in business which started to enter in the market, which cleaned the system and regulated even the trade and merchandise. The welfare which was a part of government was, of course, very much present, but the minimum wages, the social security, the good conditions to work, all of these things also constitutionally arrived in economies, because of which it was easier for the people who were employees to gain employment without having a headache of how the conditions would be, or whether they would be paid their remuneration or not. And on the other hand, for the employer also, the various employer benefits, along with the various types of policies related to business, related to in expansion of business, also were created by the government. So because of all of these things, and of course modernization, globalization, technological upgradation, because of transformation which happened on a global level, capitalism structure changed. And because of all of these conditions, the capitalism did not die. Because ultimately this ideology, capitalism, is a great ideology. We only required it to clean the exploitative mindsets and establish some ground rules so that everyone could have a win-win. Right? So because of that, capitalism did not die. And that's how it evolved. So now you guys write in the comment section below whether Karl Marx was wrong, or did capitalism survive by borrowing ideas which were meant to destroy it? Okay, let me know in your comments, in the comment section, that what do you think about Karl Marx and his view? What do you think about the dialectical materialism, the heavy stated word which was not even given by him originally? And what do you think about the idea of transition that happens in an economic structure? Okay, stay tuned for such informative videos. Till then, we are going to meet in the next video. Thank you.